meeting to order. Rose, we do the roll call?
Councilmember Wagner.
Here.
Councilmember Greenlee.
Here.
Councilmember McDaniel.
Here.
Councilmember Boger.
Here.
Councilmember Shoemaker. Councilmember Lindsay.
Here.
Councilmember Corsi.
Here. We are here for our workshop presentation on CRESA. Katie Myers.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate you taking time out of your day and listening to my comments. I'll try to be brief but informative. And I do have these two handouts in case you didn't get one at the front. If you take one of each, pass them around, that would be great. And I brought extras so they're available for any citizens that come in, and you can add them to the wall maybe if you want to for folks. So CRESA, we're the 911 center. We also do the public safety radio and emergency management for the community, but we wanted to take some time today and talk about 911 service updates in the community. The first thing I had was to just quickly review 311. And 311 started, it's a non-emergency law enforcement number that we started in September of 2015. So it's just now a year. And our goal was to provide an alternate number for the community to report non-emergency law enforcement complaints on. And with that goal, we wanted to end up shifting non-emergency calls from 911 into this business line, basically, so that 911 would be available and open for emergency calls. The one thing that we really wanted to make sure everybody understood, just as a recap, is that we don't have a 311 answering call center. It's the same 911 center that you call when you dial 911, and it's your dispatch positions as well. So when you call 311, you might be put on hold. You have to wait until somebody is available to actually take your call and manage your requests. But with the goal of allowing call takers to prioritize some of their work, so they know a 311 call can ring maybe just a little bit longer. First, they're going to answer 911. They can prioritize those calls and when they answer them. One of the things that since we've gone live, we really wanted to kind of touch bases with folks on is that we only want folks to call for law enforcement issues. If you have what you would classify as a non-emergency medical complaint or a fire complaint, if you're calling about fires or ambulances or any medical kind of problem, we want you to definitely call 911 every time. So no self-triaging non-emergency medical or fire complaints. Okay, so that's 311. Second thing up is the 911 system. So we've noticed an increase in what we call abandonment rates. Abandonment calls are calls where a person's called 911 and then hung up before we answered. And those really basically double the workload for our call takers. So last year it was at 9.72. Up to this summertime we were at 12.26. And for every abandoned call that we take, a call taker has to call back that person that hung up. In the meantime, that person's probably calling back and some other call taker has answered that phone, is handling them. So we've basically tied up two people for that one call. So one of the things that we've implemented is a 911 voice prompt. And what this does is it just tells the person after 10 seconds of ring that you've reached us, we're going to answer the phone, please don't hang up. And in the meantime, it's still ringing to the call taker. So you're not on hold and you're not in a queue somewhere in no man's land. It's still ringing to us and we're going to answer the phone as fast as humanly possible. But we're hoping that this helps folks not feel like they're wondering, did they get it? Did I get to 911? Where are they at? And we'll stay on the phone to help us so we don't have quite as many abandoned calls. And our real primary goal here is to decrease the hang-ups that we're getting and thereby decrease workload for dispatch. The other trend that we have, of course, is cell phone use. So we're at 80%, almost 80% of our every 911 call is from a cell phone. And cell phones do not provide us accurate locations. It's basically a circle on a map. And it could be very small, within 100 yards or so, or it could be miles in diameter. So, and basically the system's saying there's a 90% chance that the person calling is somewhere within this circle. In addition to people calling on cell phones, they're also decreasing or canceling their home phones, their wireline phones. So, and historically, we haven't had a way to link your cell phone number with your home address. So that means if you're having an emergency at home and maybe you're not able to say your address for whatever reason, we're really having a hard time identifying where you're at. Or if a family member, a visitor is coming to your home and has to call 911 for you, they might not know your address. So we're having, again, a hard time figuring out where you're at. So we want to tell everybody to know the location, but also post the location. So post your address in your home. Ask your family members to post their addresses in their homes. Make sure if you have babysitters coming in, they know the address and it's posted. Definitely want to push the idea that we don't know where you are when you call 911, so we need you to help us figure that out. Now, I did say that there was historically no way to link your cell phone to your address, but we're really excited about a new program called Smart 911. We pushed this out beginning in September at our Community Expo. Smart 911, if you go to smart911.com, you can go online. It's a national program, it has over 31 million accounts right now. And you can create an online profile, and any information that you put into your profile is secured, but available if you call 911 from a cell phone that is tied to that account. So this data is not shared. We don't sell it. We don't share it with other people. We don't even have access to it unless you call 911 from a cell phone that you've registered to that account. The information really is only accessible to us when you call, and it's only available for a short period of time during the time of the actual event that you call 911. Now, what kind of information might you put on this account is you can include all kinds of information, but some of the things we've identified is that you can identify if a person has difficulty speaking English, if they are at risk for domestic violence. You can include medical condition information, emergency contacts, access information if you have a gate or it's hard to find your house because it's a flagged lot, something like that. You can include multiple family members and your pets. You can add pictures of your family, pictures of your pets, pictures of your home, information about your home, like if it's 2-story, how many bedrooms there are, where those bedrooms are. The system automatically emails you and asks you to confirm the information every 6 months, so we know that there's some validity to the information that we're getting. It requires no administrative oversight on our side. And this is a request that we've been getting over and over, where people want to share and make sure their first responders know about something important to them. So this is the system that's going to allow them to do that. So I encourage everyone to create an account. They have a little picture there.
What's the web address to do that?
smart911.com.
Okay.
And then on the left side, it's fairly easy to create an account. If you have an email address right now that you check your email on and you send an email and attach a document, that's basically as complicated as it gets on this account. So on the left side, that's what your account kind of looks like. And then on the right side is when you call 911, how it's organized for the 911 call takers. It's very straightforward, fairly easy to help or to maneuver, but we're always happy to help folks if they need some help. In association with a Smart 911, that's dedicated to individuals or household accounts. We also have Smart 911 Facility, and what that is for is businesses and organizations, governmental agencies, anything of that nature that can create a facility account, including multiple campuses, multiple buildings. You can go floor by floor by floor and identify every phone number, where those phones are located, who they belong to. You can upload any sort of maps, information about hazards on the building site, after hours contacts, all of this kind of emergency planning you can upload to this account. The difference is that Smart 911 Facility, we can actually search if we need to. So it doesn't have to be somebody calling from the facility itself. It could be a passerby that's calling about a building that's, smoke's coming from or something's going wrong. There's a water main break, something like that. We can actually search the Smart 911 Facility accounts versus the Smart 911 accounts, which we cannot. Moving on to the next big thing. Hopefully recently you heard about text to 911. So we are on a regional system to allow texting to 911. We're really excited about this. It's an interim solution, not fully integrated into the 911 phone system at this point, but basically it allows a call taker at the 911 center. They log into a portal and they just monitor for incoming text to 911, and then we respond text back and forth, back and forth. So we went with a regional approach to this in Portland, Clackamas County, Washington County, all the way west to Astoria, actually. We're all using the same system online so that we're able to transfer calls back and forth if we need to. I should say not calls, texts, text conversations back and forth if we need to. We believe this is a really important step forward, especially for the deaf and hard of hearing. That community historically has had a hard time getting to 911, having to use a relay service most of the time. So this way we have direct communication with them. It also allows folks to contact us if they're in an unsafe situation where maybe they're not able to make a voice call, so they can text us instead. And sometimes you don't have a signal strong enough to make a telephone call, but a text might be able to get out. So this is an alternative way to contact us. Really important considerations for texting, though, is the timeliness. There's no guaranteed delivery of your text to us or our text back to you, so there might be a delay. And your location might actually be more inaccurate than a telephone call to us. And there's no translation services available at this time. They're still working on those services in the background. Of course, when we ask folks if you're going to text us to provide us the location and the nature of the emergency first, and not to use slang or abbreviations, because I'm not sure about you guys, but sometimes I get a text from my teenage daughter and I have no idea what those 4 letters meant. And so we're asking for folks to really no abbreviations or normal text kind of talk, just straight words, basic long words. With that, I've finished the entire presentation. That wasn't too fast. I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Paul?
Many years ago, I moved from Oregon to Washington.
Mm-hmm.
My mobile phone still has a 503 area code.
Mm-hmm.
The last time I called 911, which also was many years ago, to report an automobile accident, they insisted on transferring me to Oregon because of the 503, despite the fact that the accident was on State Route 14.
Sure.
And so, has that been fixed?
Well, I will say it's not been fixed as far as your phone will reach whatever 911 center that your phone is accessing to the tower to get service. So, and unfortunately a lot in Washougal along the river, you might get Oregon when you call 911 here,
This
or
was
on
actually
SR 14.
Vancouver, but-
So you got Vancouver. So I think that as the time goes by, we have a much more clearer understanding about how the processes work. Back historically, when prefixes, area codes really meant a location, and you could tie it to a location, we really were believing that 503, 541, if you had that number, you had to be in Oregon somewhere. We no longer have that, where area codes could be anywhere from
Yeah,
any
I mean,
number.
I might have a 202 area code, and
Right.
you're gonna send me to what, Washington DC?
No, we'll keep you here now because we have a much better understanding that it could be from any number. We have people, because you can port your cell phone number now to any carrier wherever you
Oh, yeah,
live.
exactly.
Yeah, so now that that's a common occurrence, we don't tie area codes to a location like we used to. Yes.
I recently had to report a non-emergency to 911, and I have a 360 area code. But I immediately connected with Portland and didn't realize it.
Right.
And as I was describing the location, they were saying, we're not getting this. And they finally said, where in Portland are you?
Yes.
Ah, okay. I'm not in Portland, I'm in Washougal, Washington.
Correct.
Oh, okay, we'll transfer you to the right place. Once the determination was made that we were in the wrong ballpark, we got very quickly to where we needed to be.
Correct. So the reason that is happening is because of the cell phone tower that you're getting the service on. And I will tell you that the FCC is working diligently trying to get carriers to be able to provide what they call a dispatchable location at the very onset of your call, but it's several years in the future, and really that technology is untested at this point, so I don't have any promise of a future where it would be better, where I could accurately say that's going to happen soon. Right now, it's based off of the tower that you get access from, and since you're close to the river, you're usually going to get a tower across the river, and because the tower's in Portland, that's the 911 center it's delivered to. I will say, did you have to push a button in order to get get through? Did you have a recording, something to the effect of, you've reached 911, is this a real phone, is this a real emergency, push a button? Because they have a system there where you have to push a button when you're calling usually on a cell phone to actually get through, and that's to try to eliminate what they call butt dials. We don't have that system there, so that could be, if you experience that, you can kind of understand you might be calling Portland and then quickly tell them I'm in Vancouver, I'm in Washougal, I'm on the other side. We transfer calls between us and Portland and Columbia County a lot. It happens all the time during the day and night.
Any other questions? So if I go online tonight and go to smart911.com and upload my information, and there's an emergency tomorrow, they would have that.
Yes.
And they would have it anywhere I went to in the country, although it would be my home address, because I wouldn't upload the hotel I was staying at necessarily, but.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, that's an accurate statement. Seattle is a close region that has Smart 911. Denver is another large region close by that's having it. They're all over in the nation, but those are the two closest ones around here. I'm kind of hoping Portland gets on board with us too.
Okay. No other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
I thought you knew where I was every minute.
That's me. Okay, this is our first opportunity for public comments. We have some members here watching our meeting. Anyone interested in commenting? Okay, seeing none, let's proceed to new business. Community Development Multifamily Housing Property Tax Exemption Application, Main Street Mixed Use Project. Dave.
Thank you. Council, I'll be covering for Mitch tonight. He's not able to be with us this evening, and I'm not, there we go. Yes. So, I'm pleased to present to you information about the first multifamily housing tax exemption application that we've received since you implemented that policy. The application has a name. It's called Riga Hut, and the applicant is Kevin Kavanaugh. I think Kevin's here. I've never met Kevin. Hi. Mitch has been working with Kevin and Kevin's team on this extensively, but that is our applicant. So I'll briefly walk through this. And because this is the first one that we've had, Mitch set this up to just remind us all of what the purpose of this chapter is. It's to encourage new private multifamily housing development in our urban centers. And the intent is to increase those residential opportunities in what we call residential target areas, stimulate the new construction of those opportunities, and direct some future population growth into those urban centers, all of which is consistent with the land use work that you've been undertaking as well. And if it can be owner occupied, that's great, but it doesn't have to be. So as part of your policy setting, you established two residential target areas. One is the Town Center Core and East Village District, which is essentially our town center area, and that's where this application is located. Of course, the other one was at the Waterfront Commercial District. To be eligible to apply for the exemption, you have to have the right location, and they're located in the Town Center Core. You have to have the right size. Statutorily, you have to have a minimum of 4 units, and this project has 9 units. It has to be permanent residential housing, and there's a statutory definition for that, and this is permanent residential housing. The statute requires that once they're granted an initial certificate of exemption, which is kind of the first step in this process, that they finish up in 3 years, so that's obviously something that'll be happening here, hopefully sooner. And then they need to comply with guidelines and standards that you established for the Town Center Core. And those are in Exhibit F of your packet. What I can't remember is if those are in the workshop packet or if they're in the council packet. There is a packet it's in the council packet. So in your council packet, There's an agenda bill, and there's a series of exhibits, and Exhibit F is basically a staff report that walks through all of the standards and guidelines and narrates for you how they comply with their application. So the first one is size. Next is unit type. Parking, these are the categories. Building design, it's required to be mixed use. So we'll get into those in a minute. To orient ourselves to where this project is, you can see the blue square. That's the parcel in question. It's on the north side of Main Street in the 1900 block, just west of 20th, vacant parcel. This is a site plan. I think you can see it pretty well. This is the site plan as it exists today that's been reviewed by the team. Understand there's a little bit of morphing that might take place with some of the minor details, but the site plan is going to look largely like this, if not exactly like this. So you can see a proposed building tucked up at the corner of the two streets with parking access and parking to the rear on the north of the property, and some of the other details that you can see there. We have some graphics of what the building might look like. These have been provided by Kevin and his team. This, I believe, is the elevation looking from the east toward the west. You can see what the building's going to look like, and there's this notion of some art, exterior art being on the building. Just another view kind of coming around the clock, so to speak, to get part of the south elevation as well. The longer frontage is along Main. This is obviously not the building in question, but this is a building that's similar in terms of having some art on the outside. So this is a nighttime view of a building that has some art on the outside. Might be something like this, just a close-up view of that particular piece of art, not necessarily what would be on the building on Main Street. And then a little closer look in daylight, so it gives you a feel. So I will go over the Exhibit F with you in just a moment, but just to set the stage for that, your process requires that you adopt a resolution that memorializes a contract agreement between the applicant and the city. A public hearing is required for that, so the only thing that's on the agenda tonight later is on consent for you to set the public hearing. And then on the 24th, we would conduct the public hearing, at which time the resolution would be in front of you and the agreement that goes with the resolution. So drawing your attention to Exhibit F, which is in your council packet, and you've got a couple weeks to read through that if you would like it in detail, but very briefly we'll go through the project and how it meets the criteria. And these are criteria that are specific to this town center core and East Village district. It's not going to be up on the screen. The first criteria is that you have 4 units and that it be located in a minimum 2-story building. This has 9 units and it's in a 2-story building, so it meets that criteria. Next is that all the residential units within the project have to have private kitchen and bathroom facilities. The floor plans that have been provided demonstrate that they have private kitchen and bathroom facilities. There has to be a minimum of 1 off-street parking space per unit located on the property, and there has to be adequate screening. There are 9 units and there are 9 parking spaces, so the project complies with that criterion, as well as the screening criterion, which is defers just to our base zoning code provisions. So Mitch and the team have reviewed that and found that that is compliant. It has to meet all of the underlying zoning provisions around building design, and then additionally, and this is where, and I'll bring it back to maybe that one. These are provisions specific in the town center. No blank walls if the wall is going to be visible from public or private street or a public trail or walkway or internal vehicular or pedestrian way. You can see two of the elevations here, they're not blank walls. The wall on the north side, which is not shown on one of these, is also not a blank wall. The west wall is more of a blank wall, but it's also right up against another building, so it's not really visible, if you would.
Is it be a party wall or just like a small space?
It's not going to be a party wall. It'll be an independent wall on this property. So they meet the requirement for not having blank walls. Additionally, you required that they incorporate window glazing as part of that not being a blank wall. You can see there's lots of windows, and there are windows on the other side as well. And then two of the following features, and you didn't get very specific with this because you wanted to allow developers to be creative in their own sense, but metal, stone, or wood. And there is some metal incorporated into these, and then I believe that the rectangular panels are cementitious board, which is a stone-like product. I think that's what they are.
It's not hardy.
It's not hardy plank, but
Downs and hardy is a cement board.
it's a cement board that is broken up like you see here to provide some articulation on the elevation. So it complies with the requirements, the minimum requirements of your standard. Now, what the code that you adopted says is that the building design shall be pursuant to the contract agreement. So you would be approving this design and the way the contract agreement reads, and that's in your packet, so you can read that between now and 2 weeks from now. It says substantial conformance with this. It's possible they might move a window here or there, or that they, the art might move just a little bit or something like that, but it would have to be in substantial conformance with these exhibits, which will be attached to the contract agreement and be part of the agreement. So the discretion that provides you is a little bit of discretion in looking at this design and working with our applicant to ensure that you're comfortable with this and that it's part of the contract agreement, and you point to these exhibits. Mitch has found, and so the staff has found, that the exhibits that are on the current contract agreement meet the intent and meet the letter of the code. Needs to be a mixed-use building. This is a mixed-use building. On the first floor, and if I go back to the floor plan, let's see, there are floor plans in your council packet, but not here. You'll see when you look at the floor plans that's a mixed-use building on the first floor. Not all of the first floor, but a good chunk of the first floor is going to be retail. The spaces that face Main Street, and then the entire second floor and sort of the back side, if you would, the north side of the lower floor are the residential units. So it meets the requirement for being a vertical mixed-use building. There is one requirement that requires a little bit of modification. The code that you adopted provides for that as part of the contract agreement, and that was that you set sort of a benchmark that the depth of the building on the ground floor away from the street needed to be non-residential for 30 feet at a minimum. But this is not a very big lot, and you've got to get all those parking spaces on site, so pretty tight package here. And so to get the 9 units, it requires the back part of the lower level to not be commercial, and so it's less than 30 feet off of the street. And then in the back corner, I think if I touch and hold, is it? Yes, in this area here, I believe that's a residential window. So the units are over in here in the back. These are the commercial ones. So over here, you have 0 just in this back part on the side street. Given the configuration of the lot, what the applicant's trying to do, and that we're getting 9 units here, which is 5 more than the minimum that you require, we felt that it would be appropriate for you to alter that 30-foot minimum requirement and allow the floor plan and building design as is here, but that is your discretion under the contract agreement.
We have that authority in the code to
You have that very specific authority to do that. It says it can be modified by the contract agreement. You wanted to have a number to ensure that there was a mixed use, but you knew that there'd be unique circumstances. Well, that's playing out right here. So I believe it's 25 feet deep.
Exactly right.
Yeah, so it's 25 feet deep, retail here, and then the back part is residential. And so here, 25 feet, well, actually more than 30 feet here, so it works there, but then here it's 0 feet as you're going off of 20th. But we think it's a great project and meets the intent of what you were trying to do there. It's about a 17.
Now, what's the purpose of that requirement in the 30 foot?
It's a way to make sure that that you have robust enough of a mixed use building. It's sort of a surrogate for a minimum floor area ratio of commercial space. So it's a very common mixed use component to require a certain setback B.
But it creates problems when we have smaller buildings, it looks like.
Right, and therefore you put very precisely in the code that can be varied by the contract agreement so that you can be adaptable. Yep.
And intense store frontage on the main pedestrian walkways too.
Right.
I think one of the reasons I heard mentioned before.
Right. Instead of having the retail off the parking lot and residential off the front.
Okay.
On the other hand, you may see a project that did something like that, and just where it was located and what was happening in other properties, that could be a cool project too. So it just depends on, you have unlimited discretion on that piece, and we're recommending that you approve the contract agreement with what they're showing here. I think you're getting the active retail along your main street, and then on the side street, you've got residential here. Another criterion is master plan mixed-use developments. This is not a master plan mixed-use development. It's a vertical mixed-use project, so that's not an applicable criteria. So that's it. Pretty straightforward. As you recall, you didn't want to put a large number of standards in place. You wanted to have enough to get at what we were trying to accomplish in the town center core area. This is the first project through from Kevin, and we're pleased to present it to you, answer any questions that you might have. And again, it's on for consent this evening to set the hearing on the agreement and the resolution for the 24th.
Paul?
Refresh my memory. The tax exemption is for all property tax in excess of what the present tax, or is it all of
Just
it?
for the housing.
Just the residential.
Just the residential. But there's no exemption of the school impact fee.
No. No. It's a,
Perfect, thank you.
You don't mean the school impact fee, you mean the school property tax.
No, I was concerned specifically
Oh,
about impact fee.
Okay,
okay.
that's not involved.
Yeah, there's no statutory provision in the multifamily housing tax exemption statutes for anything other than a property tax exemption.
There is a new state law that allows with the school district's consent for waiver of school impact fees, but I don't think the school district's going to consent to that.
I would
So, Michelle?
I was reading on it, it had loft on some of those places. I was just curious, is it the step downs into the bedroom that creates that loft terminology, or were there lofts in that?
I better
It's kind of a
defer.
nitnoid thing that doesn't really apply to anything, but I was just
No, it's
curious.
good. Loft is an overused word in
Okay.
my line of work, and I'm annoyed by it. But if there's vertical circulation within a unit, that's a loft.
Okay,
The beds areas are all elevated above the living room, but you're looking out into the living room. It's not a full floor, but it's a full facility.
okay, thank you.
Sure.
The other question I had was, as we go along with this, obviously if we approve this, that's solidified for 3 years. But as we're going along with this and we notice things in our criteria that we want to ramp up more or make more detailed in regards to parking spaces or size of residential units, how easy is it for us to revise it as we go along?
it's your code, so, if you want to amend the code, you would direct the staff to, you know, work on it, bring it back for workshops. And I think if we had a workshop on making modifications, and this is the first one through, it's not been that long, really, in the big scheme of things since.
And I'm
we
not
did this,
considering it,
but-
obviously, we put something out there and it wouldn't be applicable for this, but as we get more and maybe we weren't getting maybe exactly, not that this one even applies in that category,
Right.
but we're like, wait, we need to add a few more criteria to this, that type of thing.
I would encourage anyone on council to bring that up anytime, and,
Okay.
you know, if there's some consensus on the council to pursue it, then we would do that for you.
Oh,
The city attorney isn't here, this is properly a question for him, but you can weigh in.
okay.
Out of an abundance of caution, is it appropriate to say something like, this contract that we're new at, this contract does not create a precedent for any subsequent project?
You could just put that in the resolution.
I would like to see that.
We could put that in, just make it as a recital. I would say that it doesn't, because the code says that, you know, it has to be approved per a contract, so it makes it very specific, makes it a contractual
Just-
relationship.
Given the litigious nature of things, I would like to kind of nail down that we're not creating a precedent here. We like this project and we may not like its twin.
Basically, legal precedents only kick in judicial situations. There's no precedent setting in administrative law, and this is kind of administrative law,
Kind of, right?
so. Yes, Dave?
I did want to wade through the blueprints there and try to calculate the square footage of these residential units and the commercial units. What are the square footages?
Everything's roughly 700 square feet, so it's kind of carved into, think of 2 6-packs of beer stacked on top of one another. Each can of beer is about 700 square feet. Pardon my analogy.
700.
Retail and residence. Oh,
Thank you.
Some high 600s, some mid 700s.
Any other questions? Good, I'm pleased.
Yeah, it's nice to have one come through, yeah.
That's great.
Now, we're going to go on to a WashDOT presentation on SR 14 access improvements. I want to let, you trying to stop me?
Nope.
Oh, okay. I have to be in Vancouver at 6:30. I have a public hearing tonight there. If I have to leave before the presentation's over, Paul's the senior counselor, and I also would ask for an excused absence if I'm not back in time by 7. So,
I'll second that.
okay. So let's proceed.
Council, I wanted to introduce Laura Peterson. She's part of the WashDOT team that's been helping us on the access improvements project out here. So she'll introduce her team and walk you through a PowerPoint on where we are currently with the project and the upcoming open house next week.
I'm Laura Peterson with the Vancouver Area Engineering Office of WashDOT. We're the office that is responsible for delivering this SR 14 access improvements project. Lori Fagoni right here is our area engineer of this office. Brad Clark is our engineer 3, that's the main technical lead, leading our teams on this project. And Casey Lyles is our project development engineer for WashDOT Southwest Region. So we know this is a really important project, and it's your project, and we're really happy to come alongside and help deliver the vision that you have for this project. We've been doing some background work, going on this project. We've been gathering data. We have been understanding the real needs of the project. We've been doing some preliminary traffic analyses and other analyses that we're just partway through, and we've been developing conceptual alternatives of ways to address the needs on this project. So we're at the point now of wanting to go out to the public for some really early public feedback to solicit input on needs of the project, the conceptual alternatives that we'll be moving forward and analyzing, and then just soliciting any other project considerations that we need to be aware of as we progress this project. So we wanted to give you a preview of this, get your thoughts on what we're intending to show, and make sure that we're capturing your vision really. So a little background, very high level. The high level project scope is access improvements to the SR 14 corridor itself between 15th and 32nd. And this also includes an access options study in the vicinity of 27th. This project is part of the Connecting Washington funding package. So, and it's a $7.5 million overall budget for this project. Within that Connecting Washington funding package, there's also a legislative requirement to follow practical design, which is a really good idea. It's a great initiative. And really, in a nutshell, what that is looking at how can we solve the project need or meet the project need at the lowest cost possible, while also considering all the other context that's around in the local area that we need to be mindful of as we solve that primary problem. So for that reason, we are initially considering all options that might meet the project need and be within the project budget. So the needs, we've been working closely with our partners at the city and the port to understand the needs in this local area. One of the primary needs is to improve access to the SR 14 corridor between 15th and 32nd, aiding economic development. It's really clear that people can't really get where they want to go between 15th and 32nd from north of the corridor and south of the corridor. At 32nd specifically, the port, the industrial park, can't access the SR 14 corridor by going north on 32nd and just taking a direct westbound route. They have to make circuitous movements to get to SR 14 westbound. Similarly, if you're traveling south on 32nd from north of the corridor, you can't turn eastbound. So you have to take a right and go westbound. So people are making all sorts of illegal moves on SR 14 to try to get where they want to go and creating accidents and such. So that's happening a lot. Similarly, there's development plan north of 14 between 15th and 32nd, and so we are looking at providing an access in the vicinity of 27th. That's one of the main key areas that we'd like to improve. Also, like I mentioned at 32nd, we'd like to provide a westbound access from the industrial park as you're heading north on 32nd, so you can turn left there. The other primary need is really to significantly reduce serious collisions. There's been a history of collisions at 15th and 32nd, fatalities at each one, serious collisions at each one, and some of those illegal movements that I talked about are triggering quite a few accidents. So one of the primary needs is to reduce those accidents significantly. So in addition to the contextual or the primary needs, there are contextual needs, and those are really those considerations in the local area that we need to be mindful of as we solve the primary need. There are several projects planned, so north of the SR 14 corridor between 15th and 32nd, there's development plan, the town center. There's also a rail overcrossing project that's in development. So we want to work closely with the plans for those projects and make sure we have a coordinated system of accesses for whatever is addressed on the SR 14 corridor itself. Similarly, south of SR 14, the port is continuing to develop, and economic development is a little bit hindered now because of the way freight can or cannot access the corridor. And then we're also aware of a pedestrian path that is being planned west of 15th, south of the corridor, so that whatever we do at 15th would make sure that that does not hinder those plans. Another contextual need is that we would like to make sure that this improvements on the corridor at SR 14 are a gateway to Washougal. We want to point people to the city and reflect the city identity. So that's another concept that we want to make sure is captured in whatever is done on the corridor. And then, just as a note, the access improvements that we're talking about are phase one of a two-phased approach. So we can make significant improvements on the SR 14 corridor with this $7.5 million investment, and then there is that rail overcrossing project that is in development. That would be phase two. We've been meeting very closely with the City of Washougal and the Port of Camas Washougal on this project, and as well as that, we have other stakeholder and public involvement planned or underway. We've met with some key stakeholders, Lone Wolf Investments, Pendleton Woolen Mills, National Pipe and Piling, and Exterior Wood, just to gain really project-specific considerations from all of them. And we've gotten some really good input. We're continuing to work with National Pipe and Piling to understand what trucks need to access the corridor, what their axle spacings are, what their load lengths are and such, to be able to accommodate any loads that we think are actual users of this corridor.
Are they aware of the open house?
Yes,
on the
yeah,
20th?
yep. Yep, so we are continuing to work with stakeholders. We also have 2 public open houses planned. The first one is at the end of October, and the second one is in the January-February timeframe of 2017, so that we can solicit public feedback on all of the development that's going on here. And
Where will
additionally,
they be?
we have a survey as well.
Excuse me, where will they be?
Where will they be? So the first one is on October 20th, and it's at the Port of Camas Washougal building. And the second one, we haven't determined the location, but it's January-February timeframe at this point. So we wanted to show you what we'll be describing at the open houses to get your input. So the intent of the first open house really is high level. It's to introduce the project, let the public know what we're developing, to discuss the needs of the project, and to show the alternatives that we're considering. These would be very, very high level because we want them to focus on concepts, not details yet. We're very early on in the development, and we want to solicit an understanding of, do we have all the right alternatives to start with? We're trying to capture all of the ones that have feasibility. And then we, of course, want to solicit public feedback on the needs, the alternatives, and any project considerations that someone might have that we're unaware of. The second open house is meant to be more detailed. This would be where we have studied the alternatives. We compare how they address the project need. We would have some cost estimates. We would have some detail, some additional detail to show to the public. So we would go back to that second open house and show how some of the alternatives either meet or don't meet the criteria that's being discussed, and then have additional detail on the leading 1 or 2 alternatives. So for open house number 1, the materials that we're planning to show are this flyer right here. So this is a take-home flyer that, that you all should have in front of you, and it really just highlights at a high level the project need. It gives a project timeline. It gives contact information. So this is something they can take home. We will also have on poster boards the alternatives that we're being that we are describing and that we will be studying, so people will be able to see those and talk with project staff about those. And then we'll also have a board that has screening criteria, so the public can provide their feedback through that avenue, or a comment form, a written comment form for people who would rather write comments directly or have some really detailed information to provide to us. So the project schedule: between now and the spring, we're planning to host those 2 open houses, and we'll be refining and screening the alternatives. And then from summer of 2017 through the winter of 2019, we'll be getting environmental permits, we'll be purchasing right-of-way if needed, and then developing final plans and specifications and estimates. And then in the spring of 2019, we would begin construction. And this schedule assumes that we will need to purchase right-of-way. It's not a given, but it could be the case, so that's our conservative schedule. So for open house number 1, really what we're planning to show are 7 different combinations of alternatives that include roundabouts, signals, or ramps, so in various combinations. They're really high level, meant to be high level, so the public can focus on the concepts, not the details. But before this, I wanted to touch on some alternatives that we've considered and eliminated. There have been a lot of studies on this corridor, lots of improvements that have been proposed over time, and I know there have been a couple times that we've gone to the legislature to seek funding for some of these and have not been successful in seeking it because it's very large dollar amounts. So there are several interchange types that have been studied on this corridor. One, for example, is a split diamond at 15th and 32nd. So really what that entails is a half diamond at 15th where you have ramps to the west, and a half diamond at 32nd where you have ramps to the east, and then they would be connected by frontage roads. So that's a really, really expensive option because anytime you build a bridge, that adds a lot to the cost. And even the frontage roads are a lot of cost because you're on virgin alignment, you have all new construction, all new roadway and drainage, you have environmental impacts and that kind of thing. So that's one of the options that's been looked at in the past. There's a similar type of option, split diamond at 15th and 27th with frontage roads. There are full interchanges at 15th, 27th, or 32nd. Lots of different options that have been looked at. There's even a recent constituent idea that was brought up that's basically a half interchange at 27th with roundabouts on the local system and use of frontage roads. And all of those are great ideas, but they significantly exceed the budget. And for that reason, we're not moving those forward in the project alternatives. Additionally, they're inconsistent with practical design in the sense that practical design looks at meeting the needs of the project for really the lowest cost while you're considering all those contextual needs as well. So the alternatives that we are planning to show at the open house are 7 of them. Alternative option A includes no improvements at 15th. It includes ramps to the west of 27th, so a westbound on-ramp and an eastbound off-ramp, and then it includes a roundabout at 32nd. Option B is a roundabout at 15th Street, no improvements at 27th, and a roundabout at 32nd. Option C is a roundabout at 15th, and it shows roundabout couplets just west of 27th, and it has a couple of different options here. The roundabout couplet is one on SR 14 itself and one on Addy, or an alternate would be a roundabout couplet just west of 27th, and that is a direct connection north. So that's an alternate there. And then there's also a roundabout at 32nd. And with this option, this one we would need to phase the construction because the $7.5 million budget would not cover all these improvements. Option D is a roundabout at 15th, ramps at 27th, and safety improvements at 32nd, which would really be concrete barrier down the median of SR 14 at 32nd.
Like a Jersey barrier?
Like a Jersey barrier, yeah. Option E is a roundabout at 15th, ramps at 27th, and a roundabout at 32nd. This would also be an option that would need to be phased construction because it would be outside of the $7.5 million budget.
How much more would it take?
How much more? We haven't estimated yet the ramps at 27th. When we looked at the Reed Middleton study that had been done, and basically each roundabout was about $3 million, plus or minus.
So we can do the 2 roundabouts with no improvements at 27th
Yeah, we think,
under C.
we think so, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
You said you didn't know, is it less or more than those roundabouts would cost, that on-off ramp?
We haven't studied it yet. It's in kind of an environmentally sensitive area, and I think the soils are not very good, so we would likely have a pretty expensive wall. So we need to do a little geotechnical work to tie that down. And option F is a signal at 15th, no improvements at 27th, and a signal at 32nd.
That's just adding a signal at 32nd, basically.
Yep, exactly. And it would be improving the signal that's at 15th as well. It's a span wire system right now, so
It's a what?
span wire system. It's not a really permanent, robust signal with a mast arm and a pole. So it could be improved in that way. And option G is a roundabout at 15th, no improvements at 27th, and a signalized intersection at 32nd. So, yes, go ahead.
Will the signal at 32nd then allow you to go northbound on 32nd and make your left-right turns east-westbound?
Yes.
Everywhere?
Yep.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
thank you.
So these are all, yes, go ahead.
So this would cost how much, option G?
Option G, we haven't actually estimated option G, but generally a signal is less than a roundabout. So the roundabout's around $2 to $3 million, depending on the size and the features, and the signal would be quite a bit less than that.
Okay, and we still don't know how much the on-ramps at 27th?
Correct, we don't know yet, we haven't gotten that far. Yes,
There's often a traffic backup on 32nd because of the trains and stuff like that.
mm-hmm.
Is there a set of concept in your roundabout for like holding lanes or anything like that, or is that just a future detail to be covered?
It is a future detail to be covered, but we have a couple conceptual ideas that we've been kicking around because we've heard from multiple people that the train backups are a real issue, so we're spending a little time up front looking at those. One concept that we have is that we would detect if there's a backup from the train, so we would have a queue detection, and we would warn people who are traveling eastbound who want to access 32nd, let's say it's a roundabout, we would tell them with a dynamic signal, or a dynamic sign actually, that there's backup on 32nd, so don't enter the roundabout. And then we would have queue storage for them in their own lane, so they would not block traffic who needs to go through eastbound.
David, has there been a study on 32nd, by a traffic engineer of how often it's backed up onto 14, at what times? Has there ever been a study like that?
We
If,
haven't
when,
done one.
how long?
I don't know if the state has done one or not.
We have, so we actually had a video camera record what takes place there when the train comes, because we wanted to see how quickly, or how much it backs up, and then how quickly it clears. And our traffic engineers are telling us that it takes, it backs up for about 2 minutes, and then it takes another 2 minutes to clear that queue from a train. So we're also going to be looking at future train expectations, unit trains, and other things that might develop in the future, and see what effects from those might show up on 32nd and affect the corridor.
And that happened how many times a day, or just at
They
rush hour?
they probably have the data, but I don't have it offhand. But I know they've been looking at how often it takes place. I just don't know offhand.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, or do you have a?
So these are the options that we're planning to show at the open house. So to see if there are any other options that the public might have that they want to bring forward. So we start with a full list, and then we whittle down from there. The other materials that we're planning to show at the open house, we want to solicit public feedback through screening criteria. So we'll actually have a poster board that has various categories of screening criteria that we'll have them vote on with sticky dots. So economic vitality, community livability, safety, gateway aspect, traffic phasing, construction phasing, environmental, all sorts of categories for the public to weigh in on. And then we'll have, like I said, a comment form for people who want to leave written comments, and we will also have a survey for people who cannot attend the open house. So those are the materials we're planning to show. After open house number 1, we will be continuing to do development work, finish our analyses, work on cost estimates, have a really good sense of how these options meet the needs of the project, fit in with the cost estimate, et cetera. And we will be refining those and going to the second open house in January, February timeframe. But we wanted to show you these and see if you had any feedback on what was being presented or any other ideas.
Yes, well, I can push it for 5.
Okay.
I know you're just aching to take over.
It's easy to get distracted.
I know. So we have 1, 2, 3, what, G is what letter of the alphabet?
We have 7 alternatives, or
7.
7 combinations, really.
So that's a range. Any other oh, Michelle?
Well, my only suggestion is this alternate C here. If it's a phased construction required, if you could leave that middle part open there to be either this on-off ramp situation or the 2 roundabouts, since this is a developing area and
Yes.
we're still kind of progressing in that, if we committed to C, would we be committed to those 2 roundabouts that are there, as opposed to still having the option of the on-off ramp?
Yeah.
And I don't know if that would have to be a whole nother alternative, or this middle part would just be, you know, to be further studied and based on what's going on.
So we'll look at it as a coordinated system, and we will look at if it's ramps or if it's roundabouts in the vicinity of 27th. How well does it operate on the corridor? How well does local traffic get to the corridor? And give some pros and cons, and you guys can decide what you want to move forward.
And costs, probably, some cost estimates.
I just didn't know if the middle portion could be left open.
Paul, I'm going to recognize you and then turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you. Of course, now I'm distracted. And I don't remember what my question was. Anyone else? Oh, I remember now. One of the things that I would like to, I know what it was. We have let a contract, hopefully you're aware, that we've let a contract to look at transportation planning for all of those vacant fields in our downtown area. And the due date on that is beginning of the year?
6 months.
6 months, yeah.
But it's dovetailing really nicely.
Okay, I just
They're
wanted to
fully
make
aware.
sure that
Yeah.
you're aware of that.
Yeah, they've
and
been
that-
keeping us well informed, and we really want it to be a coordinated transportation system. So we've seen some of those early graphics, and we're considering that as we develop the various alternatives.
Perfect, and then the other thing that grabbed my attention is, under project needs, gateway to Washougal. Years ago, we had plans for roundabouts, and we'd actually hired a landscape architect to design the center pieces, one of which was this huge, almost teepee thing made out of logs, which I'm not sure exactly appealed to me, but it was certainly unique. So if there are any ideas on what to make those things look like, I know that by and large, you don't want the oncoming traffic to see each other. And so you need something tall enough to prevent that. But just some concepts on, I don't know, are you gonna, is it gonna be, how's it gonna be landscaped? Is it gonna be sculpture garden? Is it?
It's really an open slate because we want to reflect Washougal and what matters to Washougal. So I could see input from the public at an open house, maybe the second open house, to gain that kind of input, or a competition of some variety that involves the schools, or some way to gain community input. 'Cause we could put something nice in there, but we really want it to reflect what you guys care about.
Yes, I certainly would encourage Councilman Lindsay to get her art committee engaged.
I have a question. If WashDOT does the roundabout on 27th, the one that's up, that you have on this drawing in Addy, now that's not on a Washington highway, so that would be a city responsibility,
It would be
right?
part of that phase construction.
So that would not be part of what you're doing anyway, right?
Yeah.
But they're helping us with the alternatives analysis of it,
Okay.
feasibility, what it would look out like, what the pros and cons, the costs.
Yep,
So,
environmental considerations.
Right.
But the actual cost of it would come to us in the city for our.
Right, and we'd go to the state and
Yeah.
ask them for the money, right?
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Dave?
What's the purpose of the open house? Is it to listen to input from the public? Or is it to, like it was last time, to convince the public that the solution you're presenting is the right one?
Well, we really don't have any predetermined solutions at this point. We're looking at what are the needs and then various ways to address the needs. And so we want a big, wide net of alternatives to start with. So we want to hear from the public, did we miss any? Are there any that we really have not considered? And then there are real specific project considerations that we've asked from key stakeholders, but we don't know if those are all the considerations. So we want anybody from the public who has something that they want to tell us to help us as we do this design, so we can reflect what is needed. So it really is asking.
Great. If you could pass that on to your engineers that are gonna be manning the displays, it'll be different from last time.
Okay.
Because last time, I spent a couple of hours listening to how wrong my ideas were, because I was bringing up concerns about roundabouts. And this time, I'd like somebody to listen.
Very good.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Opportunity for public comments. Any of the public who would like to make a comment at this point?
Oh, can I just make one other
Yeah,
comment?
yeah.
I almost forgot to say, thank you very much for the work you're doing and for coming and bringing this issue to us and working with us.
It's really our pleasure.
It's important.
It's a nice project. There are real clear needs that we've been hearing, and there's really good solutions that are possible out there.
If you're looking for needs, this is the place.
Public comments from anyone? Last call. Mayor's report will defer to the meeting. Council member comments. Dan? Joyce? Dave? Jennifer? Lieutenant Colonel. That's it. We're adjourned.